Today's hike is towards Matmora on the northern edge of Austvågøya in the Lofotens. Promises to have steep edges and fantastic views. 2 parking spots for Matmora, main one here just beyond Delp. If you find that full, go a little bit further down the road and there's a lay-by where you can see those camper vans. The start of the walk is very obvious. Through the gate from the first stroke main car park and follow your way up the very clear trail. One of the complaints about the first part of the walk is that it's rather muddy, but you can typically jump from rock to rock and there's the occasional border walk to help you over wetter sections. It's more and more of the same steep, rather muddy woodland path in this stage of the hike, and kind of at that cusp point in terms of steepness that you can generally keep your foot flat on the ground but occasionally want to be going up onto your toes. And as you can perhaps see here, you sometimes get a slight choice in terms of steepness of path that you take. I think up there is Delpen, the first summit on the route, and down below just wanted to point out that there are occasional rather faint red marks that mark the trail. Here a very small section that's slightly more difficult. I wouldn't call it scrambling exactly, but you might find yourself using your hands a little bit whichever route you take. The trail to this point has been quite consistent, steep with that thin layer of mud underneath. Going up all the way through woodland up to here where the trees are starting to thin out, meaning that there's an increasing number of mini and major viewpoints. In terms of the gradient, you could walk all of it, but just those couple of places where it helped to use your hands. This cluster of rocks is Delpen, and further up the trail, probably around about there somewhere, is marked on AllTrails as being a particularly scenic view. And this is the said scenic viewpoint, fantastic looking across to the small inlet to the east of Delpen. You could very easily spend plenty of time just up here on the plateau enjoying the view if it's a good day. Example here of the phenomenally different colours, beautiful shades of blue and turquoise in the nearby inlet. To keep getting the better views, I've followed the outer path around the plateau that diverges southeast from the main AllTrails route, and from here you can also get a good view of the main ridgeline going up to Matmora, which certainly from here looks very daunting. It's taken about an hour to meander around the edge of the plateau, and now it's time to get back to hiking uphill once again. Becoming a bit more ridge-like here, and you can see hopefully that there's a path there to the left. The advice I've seen is that that is rather exposed, and so therefore better to keep going more towards the top of the ridge, taking the right hand of the 2 forks there. This cairn is another marker near to where it says Sorvest on the AllTrails route. This is the one bit of the route that descends. Make sure you go off to the left here of these craggy rocks, not to the right. You can then see the main path snaking along, and the choice point here where if you want to follow the edge of the cliffs you can go that way, and if you don't, and that's me, you can go around this way. Here's a slightly thin bit of the path, and I'm showing this so that you can judge whether it fits with your level of head for heights. It's not that easy to see from below as you're coming up, but the pathway laterally that runs across the hillside departs here. To be honest, it's quite steep underneath that path, and I'm not totally convinced that just going straight up on the left hand edge wouldn't be easier and feel a bit more secure. But anyway, I will try the lateral path. This is just to give an example of what you'll face. The path is going here. I'm finding it okay, but it is a long way down. When I said okay, it was probably with something of a quaver in my voice, because this isn't great. The path is very thin, so you have to watch your feet quite constantly, so it's slow going, and that's not helped by the fact that the path splits at various points, so there's no specific main path in a number of places. You just have to choose which one you want. The path that I was following just suddenly came to an end, and I looked up on AllTrails and realised that I was maybe 100 feet or more below where the marked path is, so just had to scramble up the mountainside to get back on it. This is on a sunny day with light winds. Heaven knows what would happen if this was bad weather. I mean, you really shouldn't take this route if visibility is anything other than good. For a second time, the path that I was on, which seemed perfectly clear, just came to an absolute dead end, and I had to then scramble all the way up this hillside to get to the top, which fine, I can do, but I really would not recommend that lateral path, and I find it difficult to believe that it's really more hairy than coming along the main route that's marked on AllTrails, which is the top of the ridge. I think if I was going to do this again, I would certainly try the ridge route. It's taken me about an hour and a half to reach this point from the Delpen plateau, and both that plateau and also this hillside were really nice places that if it's a sunny day or even just an ordinary otherwise pleasant day, one could sit and enjoy the view. I'm not going to give time over to that because I can see just up ahead, that little box on the top of the hillside is Matmora summit. The path around here is fairly obvious. There are quite a few rocks underfoot, and then further up towards the summit, boulders to be navigated around, but it all feels very safe, very secure, very straightforward, particularly compared to the previous section. At this point, you can follow the main AllTrails route up here. There is another path going around here, and also a further one that's marked that's lower down that goes up and round. But I think based on my prior experiences, I'm gonna this time stick with this route. Because of the boulders, it's not always completely simple to follow the path, and I've not seen any of those red markers for a very long time. There is the occasional cairnlet like this which can help you. Key thing is, don't veer off too far to your left because of the very long drop. If you're at all concerned about that, you can just follow one of the two lower paths, which, looking at them, seem to be a lot gentler than the one in the previous section. Here looks to be one final red marker. I'm tempted to say a bit too little too late, since I've not seen any others since leaving the wood at the beginning. You can also see on that rock, and maybe others, there's quite a bit of algae and moss, meaning if it's at all wet, going to be more difficult crossing the rock and boulder field to get here, and going to require quite a bit more care. But here we are. Here is the cairn that marks the top of Matmora. And this is what everybody comes up here for. An incredible 360-degree panorama of sea and snow and mountains and fjords and more. It's taken me about 3.5 hours to get here. Could just retrace my steps to Delp, but I'm actually going to go down the far side of Matmora, hoping it might be a bit less adventurous than the route I came up, and going to get some views. One nuisance is that once you get down to the road, you can see below it's a 4-mile walk back to Delp, but be that as it may. It doesn't look promising from this perspective how to get down, but you can see there's a set of cairns, and if you follow them to the far one and then look down, you'll see that there's a very scrabbly boulder field, and that's the way you descend. Yes, there are boulders. Yes, this time of year there's a bit of snow, but in general the path down at the moment is quite easy to follow and not too difficult. So far so good for the path down. You will need a reasonable sense of balance to get across the scree fields that cover some of the path, but the route is quite well signposted across the scree with red cairns and other markers, and the path itself is steep enough that you're coming down pretty quickly, but it's not so steep that you risk losing your footing. The latter part of the path down from Matmora has just been a fairly gentle, flat, evening woodland stroll, but then you are faced with this. A wee bit of excitement as you have to haul yourself down via the rope. If I were going to climb Matmora again, this is definitely the route that I would take. It's much easier, much quicker, and less scary than going the other way from Delp. And if I look behind me, it seems as if there may well be parking places here that one could quite readily use. And here from the other direction is the turn off from the main road, and there you can see there's parking for, I'd estimate, at least a good half a dozen cars. For myself, it's taken around an hour and a half to get from the top of Matmora down to the road, so I would say the total elapsed walking time from Delp to here around about 5.5 hours. That in itself doesn't really match with AllTrails saying 4.5 hours, because I am moderately fit, and what it certainly doesn't factor in is the fact that I now have to walk the circa 4 miles along this road back to Delp again to pick up my car.